Good afternoon. Welcome to the Health Zone podcast. My name is Matt Roboto. We're happy to have you here with us today. It's an honor to be here with a very special guest, a leader in the cognitive world, a gentleman that's been doing cognitive research and kind of made it his life mission for a while. Coming straight from Singapore, we have Dr. Shawn Watson. Welcome to the Health Zone.
Thank you. Just Shawn. Shawn's
Shawn.
Good. Yeah.
Shawn. So, Shawn, well, thank you for coming to join us today.
Happy to be here.
It's fascinating. I've been doing a little bit of reading on you and looking at a little bit of your background. You at a relatively young age, it's very impressive what you've been able to do with studies and research and development of products surrounding cognitive health in the brain. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, it takes a long time. Neuroscience is a very slow science, so we've been at it for a long time. My research started probably 12 or 13 years ago. And our company is quite unique in what we're trying to do. So really the genesis of it is I personally got a little frustrated with how slow sometimes research works. So you can make great discoveries in the lab, but it'll be years or decades before you actually see it enter the market. And we're seeing such changes in the industry right now around natural health products. We're learning more about like hardcore chemistry and biochemistry. And so we have this great basic science that I worked on. But then we have this new development of these compounds, and I try to merge the two to bring products to market quicker. And that's really the genesis of the company, what we're trying to do and what we're trying to tackle.
Excellent. And now when we talk about the brain and different types of products, I've been, it's like my parents, for example, they ask me all the time, they're just like, oh, my mother's like, oh, your father forgot this, he forgot where the keys are. Next thing you know, he's going to forget our anniversary. So we naturally think of cognitive decline or supplements or products to help the brain. It immediately goes, I call it the AARP club. Anyone north of 50, 55. But it's like, that's not necessarily the case. Like a lot of the research that you're doing, it absolutely helps the senior citizens, but it's amazing, like some of the discoveries that you've made where there's benefits for people of all ages.
Yeah, I mean, the fear in the older demographic is real. So dementia and Alzheimer's, of which Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia, is definitely a real thing. What's changed in the industry, though, and neuroscience in general, is what we're learning that those diseases, even though they may show themselves in the, when you're 60s, 70s, they may start decades earlier. So like maybe in your 40s, this is actually starting. And actually, in regards to aging itself, the brain starts to age really in our 20s. That's when we kind of hit our peak and we start to go down. And in a perfect world, if we all had perfect diets and perfect exercise and we didn't live in cities with pollution, we wouldn't need to take any measures. But the reality is, in the stresses that people experience at a young age now, we're seeing they're having a major effect on brain health. So recent studies have shown that like missing one night of sleep and you see severe kind of problems with how the brain's working. One night of missed sleep. And think about how many kids in their university days or early career, Allnighters are a common thing, right?
Very common.
And the mechanism behind it that those young people are suffering from is probably the same thing that happens in the older demographic. Certainly older people will recognize it more, but brain health isn't just for aging people. And that's a message that not just myself, but neuroscientists kind of all over the world are starting to hopefully shout louder.
That's actually two things. It's very alarming and very frightening. I mean, we miss a day of sleep. I think that today in 2019, it's very common. Whether it's a student in college or whether it's a young professional or even someone, to stay ahead, we're taught to work harder. Work harder, like work smarter, work harder. But there's all-nighters. We're consuming more caffeine, more coffee, more energy drinks than ever before. But it seems like that's kind of the trade-off. Is in order for performance. I mean, how do you avoid this, or how do you avoid this? How do you treat this? How do you try to bring some sort of normalcy to this?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think the first thing that we need to start thinking of is kind of the brain as its own organ, and we think about heart health all the time. We think about bone health. People are always concerned about muscles, but we forget the brain at a young age. We don't look for solutions around brain health because it's just not kind of the front of mind, so to speak. So first is just start thinking about it more and recognizing that when you're missing sleep, it is going to affect performance. And you have to recognize that your brain is just like any other organ and you need to take care of it. So long-term solutions, though, I think what we're seeing here is the vast majority of products on the market for cognition are stimulant-based. Pretty much all of them are. And there's nothing wrong with stimulants necessarily. We all need our caffeine in the morning. We all, wake up too early some days and need to pick me up. That's not what our company does. That's not what my mission is about. The stimulants will take you from 100% to 120%. What my mission is, and what our company is working so hard and what our research focuses on, is increasing that baseline. So we want to take people from 60% who aren't performing where they should back up to 100%. So it's not that our solutions aren't that you take it before that test or that big conference or before that big road trip. It's actually something that builds up over time, and it's about brain health. So performance through health, not performance through stimulation.
Shawn, what got you into this? I mean, there's usually some sort of trigger or something that, to have dedicated the amount of time that you have to learning about the brain, to learning about cognitive health. What was that trigger moment for you? What was that big moment?
Sure.
That made this your
Yeah,
motivation?
I mean, people commonly ask me, like, what's it like to be an entrepreneur? I'm like, don't do it.
I've had that conversation.
you need a passion. You really do, because you work so hard and you give it your all. So for me, it was my grandparents. And again, I got frustrated with the pace of research. So my grandparents suffered from dementia. We don't know whether it's Alzheimer's or what it was, but certainly they had dementia. My uncle had it. It's in my family, and it's a terrible disease. And I felt that there's new ways to look at the disease. And luckily or maybe not luckily, but the major theory of Alzheimer's disease has gone through a huge paradigm shift. So we used to think about plaques and tangles and these certain proteins that were in the brain. We're starting to learn that those probably aren't as important as they used to. So I think we're really on the forefront of new solutions for brain health, from the older demographic, but like we already talked about, to the young professionals who need to start thinking more and taking care of the brain.
Now, you bring up a good point about those new solutions. Some of the research that I've done, I've studied and kind of looked into various types of brain supplements, cognitive supplements, and a lot of them show, like clinical research, clinical studies show that it can increase functionality by 5 to 10%. Now, some of your research and some of the developments that you've made with some of your products, is it true, like you can go maybe as high as 25%, up to 25% with some of these performance enhancements?
Right. So I think to take a step back as to where we started. And so we started because that's what really makes us different from a lot of different companies, how we're going about doing things. So the clinical trials out for these different products are, again, stimulant based. So you see small increases in certain cognition parameters, right? So maybe it's focus, or maybe it's memory, or something like that. Our focus is overall brain health.
And I just kind of interject there. What are those different categories?
Right.
For the viewers and listeners. So you mentioned focus. You meant, like, what are those different parameters or those different areas that we could hit?
Great question. It's not a super clear answer, to be honest. Depends on the neuropsychologist you talk to. So I'm not a neuropsychologist. I'm a more neurophysiologist. But generally speaking, we talk about things like multitasking. So that's kind of one cognitive parameter. How we tend to separate in neuroscience is it tends to light up different parts of your brain. So what you're doing when you're multitasking compared to solving a math problem, they'll probably be different parts of your brain. To memory is actually a very broad concept. Memory isn't just one thing. There's loads of different types of memory. There's the memory like, you shake somebody's hand and you immediately forget their name. Quite common for people, like that instant verbal recall. To spatial memory, like cars working around and you're driving in your car and where are they around you on the road? Important for a football player. Where is the opposition in your teammates? So there's a whole different types of cognitive domains. And generally speaking, with these stimulants, we see improvements in the same domain. So whether you take coffee or another brain supplement, or it'll probably increase those same domains. Mm-hmm. For us, however, what we're looking at is overall improvements. Going back to single cell, where it all started, back in the lab, working through to animals, now into humans, we see these broad improvements about multiple domains, which aligns with our theory that it's not about a stimulant, it's about improvement in overall brain health. So kind of analogy I like to use is a lot of products, if you have an engine that maybe isn't working so good, what our product is about cleaning that engine and bringing it back to where it should be. The other products out there are about putting nitrous oxide in. And yeah, we all need that nitrous oxide sometimes to give us that power and that boost. But no, we're about cleaning the engine and getting it running efficiently and well again.
Excellent. It's interesting. We keep using the word performance, and we talked about how there's things that we could do as early as in our 20s, where we're starting to see a decline, or there's stuff that's in our lifestyle. I think back, like I was I played sports all my life. I was a college athlete. I was fortunate enough to play basketball in college. And I think back to a lot of those nights, like where it's just early morning practices, late night studying, and there was, I think of like, I never took anything to necessarily help with my performance other than a coffee or whatever, a slice of pizza to give me like the instant carbs. But to talk about like how like these types of products and your research and some of your developments, like how can it help with athletic performance, or how can it help like kind of give you, and I don't want to call it an edge, but like just kind of bring you up to like where you can be performing at your where you can be delivering your optimal performance.
Sure. So the number one thing when you talk about the brain, the most important thing is sleep, period. You need to get your sleep. And I always tell people that that's better than any pill. You need your sleep. Second is exercise. So exercise, we don't even understand the link really quite yet, but exercise improves brain health, which is great. And then the third thing in regards to athletic performance is actually what you see quite often is athletes don't live a healthy life. Surprisingly enough, they actually are very poor sleepers. They tend to be very stressed out, especially in college, because it's the studies plus the sports and whatnot. So they're not living the ideal lifestyle of it. And for us, about athletic performance is it's not about the stimulants again. You don't see athletes taking the stimulant drinks or the stimulant pills. And us, the performance is about improving health. Just like you improve the health of your muscle, we improve the health of the brain, and then you see the byproduct is better performance. And certainly for athletes, it's particularly important, because talk to any professional athlete, and they always tell you that, once you're in the ring, once you're on the court, it's about the mental game. Mm-hmm. It's all about the mental game. And what's remarkable is in certain sports like rugby or tennis, you see decision-making capabilities plummet during the sport. So even over the course of one round or one game or whatever, their brain performance declines. And quite often in sport, it's not about playing better, it's about making less mistakes. And so that's where it's really about. That brain health is so important for athletes.
It really is. It really is. I wish we could have had this conversation.
Well, this is a new
20 years ago.
It's a new conversation for athletic teams. You didn't bring in a neuroscientist before. So I've talked to everything from MMA athletes about this to eSports athletes. It's a relatively new thing.
So I've been reading too that gaming is huge. Gaming is bigger than it's ever been.
Uh-huh.
Gamers have been looking for some sort of competitive edge or some sort of just that extra level of sharpness. Have you worked with any gamers? Have you worked with anything, or has anyone reached out to you about this?
Yeah, they definitely have. So we've done a lot of work. I do give some talks to eSports. It's everybody's learning about eSports. It's very new, because now you're having athletes who are really young, very poor diets, very poor sleeping. They stay up till 3 or 4 a.m. Blue light, massive problem with the screens and whatnot. And it's an interesting sport because it's only the brain, right? There's no other component to it. So brain health is critical for them. So I think we're going to see some really big developments. We're certainly working on it ourselves. And so we're engaging some teams and trying to find solutions that's unique to to that lifestyle.
Tell us about a little bit about, so who are some, I don't know if you can mention names or not, but like what are some of the very noteworthy fields that you're, or industries where you're assisting, providing research and providing, just providing edges. Talk about some of that. Like where are some of your key success stories been?
Sure. Well, it is about the application of what we're working on is so broad, everywhere from young demographic to the older group. Then it's broadened out to a whole bunch of different categories. Everything from, like I said, like MMA athletes, which is really unique, giving a talk to 50 of the top MMA athletes in Asia, to eSports athletes, even just to working professionals. So actually, one of the biggest categories for us is people in their 30s and 40s who are just stressed out, family and work. They're just not where they should be.
What are some of the key differences between the solution that you provide, which is all natural products, versus some of the pharmaceutical drugs that are out there that are geared towards improving brain function?
Right. This is where I like to think is what we're disrupting. So to be completely honest, the health supplement industry is struggling with trust with customers. There's a lot of bad cases out there where companies haven't done what they should have done. The science hasn't been up to a quality that is expected of scientists. To the other side, though, which is pharma, which is highly regulated, high quality science, what we're trying to bring is the science of pharmaceuticals, but we're using these natural-based products. So the products that don't require prescriptions, and that's where we want to merge it. So the research we've done thus far, and then the upcoming clinical trials that we're doing, are the standard that we hope to bring new trust and credibility to the whole the whole industry, really. And that's the disruption we want to be, is providing trusted, credible science.
There's a lot of stuff that we've read as well where it talks about, and you know this as well as anybody, it's if you have there's the immediate benefits of having a healthy brain, improving your cognitive function, but there's a trickle down effect where there's a whole myriad of other health benefits as well. What are some of these? What can somebody experience outside of just a sharper mind when they're really taking care of and treating their brain and treating like the way they should?
Great question. I don't get asked that question very much, because that's really what we're going towards, because a healthy brain changes so many different things. So in our first pilot trials that we did that were very successful, one of the most reported feedbacks above cognitive improvements was actually sleep. People said they slept better. And that was consistent from 30 to 75-year-olds is better sleep quality. And if we're improving brain health, it makes sense they're going to start to sleep better. And so the next clinical trial that we're doing, we actually bought a Fitbit for everybody, and we're going to track sleeping for all of the participants. So it is a trickle-down effect, because it's about health. It's not about the stimulation, it's about health.
And then once you're sleeping better,
yeah, you feel better. More energy.
That leads to
Absolutely. We underestimate how important the brain is for overall health, right? I mean, look at the effects of depression, right? Your whole body can waste away, even though it's kind of just in your head sort of idea. So the brain just influences every aspect of our life.
And it seems like right now as well, there's a big connection between the brain and the gut.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stuff coming out, and that's an emerging and developing area. Does any of your research center around that, or is there anything that you can share with us in that regard?
Very cool research coming out in that area. We're not in that space. Myself, it's not my area of research, but certainly we know diet is going to have a major effect, and the flora in your gut, there is this access between the two. So it's never just a simple solution. It's never about a single pill. It's about kind of changing all aspects of our life, and I think we're a very important part of it, as is gut health. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Story-wise for us, it's just really interesting to talk to people and seeing how actually brain health is from Asia, because we do a lot of work in Asia, all the way to North America. We actually have so much in common for the challenges that we're facing.
So that's a very interesting observation. So whether you're talking to a 17-year-old or a senior citizen, the root of the challenge, many times it's all connected. Like it's all kind of generating from the same area.
Yeah, I mean, our underlying theory is that the mechanistic process that causes that video gamer, after missing 3 days of sleep and only drinking sodas, is actually quite similar to the challenges faced by an older person. Obviously, the speed of that decline is quicker in the young person, but when you start doing tests, and we do a lot of neuropsychological tests, the performance decline is very similar, which is probably scary more than anything for these young kids growing up.
Shawn, in 60 seconds or less, what would be the message that you would want to deliver to our viewers and our listeners?
60 seconds or less. Oh, good question. Think about your brain. It sounds funny to say, but you take care of every other aspect of your body. You're always concerned about your joints and your muscles and your heart. Think about your brain in the same way, and look behind the science and find credible sources, because there's a lot of good stuff out there. Sometimes it's tough to find, but it is out there. So start thinking about your brain.
So Shawn, what is it about your technology and research that is so different than everyone else's?
Right. Well, I think the first thing is we started very small. So I'm a cellular molecular biologist. That's where I started, is tiny single neurons. And we learned about a mechanism there. And that was really the inspiration from that initial work that led to the rest. So from single cells to animals to humans. To sum up what our technology is about, it's about fats. So we've known for a long time that fats are important. That's why you take your fish oils, right? Your omega-3s. That's why you give your kids EPA and DHA when they're growing up, to give these key fats to make the brain grow properly. Us and our technology is about keeping those fats repaired. So it's one thing to intake the fats, but what we're learning is once they're in the brain, we need to make sure that they're constantly repaired. And your brain has a great repair mechanism. So they're called essential fatty acids. Yeah. You've probably heard that term before. Absolutely. Because you don't get them, you only get them through your diet. Your brain can't make them themselves. And so historically what that means is that our brain wants to keep them in our brain for as long as possible. Normally when damage occurs, you just get it out of your body, right? Because it's replaced through your diet. We can't do that with these essential fatty acids. So there's a repair cycle that keeps them constantly functioning well within our brain. What we've learned though, and what other researchers around the world, it's certainly not just us, this is a lot of different labs, is that things like stress, lack of sleep, diet, pollution, like even just urban pollution, or aging causes this repair cycle to become disrupted. And what you see is you start to see a buildup of these damaged fats within the brain, and they can cause a host of different problems. They can go on to cause the formation of certain toxins. They can actually cause inflammation, and in maybe some cases may cause some of the foundations of Alzheimer's disease. So this cycle is critically important, and that's where we work. And what our technology does is it's a multi-therapeutic or multi-target solution. We've picked certain ingredients and natural compounds and molecules that are out there that, one, we know get through digestion, get through the blood-brain barrier, which is a key thing that a lot of people don't think about. And actually, we know the mechanism of action in the brain. And what these compounds together do is help to increase the efficiency of this repair cycle. So it's about keeping these fats repaired within our brain all the time.
So this
long-winded, I know.
This repair cycle, this is when we talk about this repair cycle, it's almost anti-aging to a sense. I mean, you can only, I don't want to go too over the top here, but like we can almost say that your technology is almost like a fountain of youth for the brain.
Well, definitely not there yet. That's
maybe, I said I didn't want to go too over the top, but it's
no. I mean, that's what remember. Ultimately, what we're trying to go for is the healthy brain. Mm-hmm. I will say on that topic though, the brain's interesting because basically once we hit adulthood, like early 20s, the brain cells that you have are going to be the ones you die with. There's a few exceptions to the rule for sure, like the hippocampus, other parts of your brain where you see neurogenesis or new brain cells being made. But generally speaking, the brain cells you have, that's all you're going to have for the rest of your life versus the rest of our body. So think of like when I get a sunburn, I get damage. What happens? Well, the cells flake off and new cells grow. The brain can't do that. So it's quite unique challenges that our nervous system faces because it can't just regenerate itself. And so when you talk about anti-aging or stuff, it's interesting to work with a cell type because it's totally different than the rest of our body. And we can do things that can actually maybe reverse certain aspects of aging. Certainly my original work at university, when I was looking at single cells, we were able to reverse certain aspects of cellular aging. Again, a long way from humans yet, but it showed that it was potentially possible.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, we're also excited.
So Shawn, you've spent some time talking about natural aging. What about conditions of injury? That seems to have a very dramatic effect on the brain as well.
Absolutely. And we're learning a lot about this still. I think we're, as a community, as a scientific community, we're starting to pay more attention with it. Certainly things like the NFL, boxing, MMA fighting, we're starting to think more about brain health and injury. In general, what we're learning is obviously the big concussions are bad, but you don't want to have lots of repeats of those. I think maybe of a surprise, we've known about it for a number of years now, but I think it's really getting into the public perspective now, is that it's these little hits. It's the little concussions that maybe, the fighter will fall or the football player
takes.
Right. So they maybe just shake it off and keep going. Those seems to be a critical determinant of overall brain health. And remember, when we're talking about this, the big worry is Alzheimer's disease. It's about dementia later in life because the brain cells, once they're lost, generally speaking, again, there's a few exceptions, but they're gone for good. We can't bring brain cells back to life. And that's a big problem and the scare with it.
And this is the big thing too, when you, the mixed martial arts community, they always say they're a lot safer than boxing. Like these guys, even though it looks more brutal with some of these hits that they're taking, they take one, they're out, and then they're back up. Not saying that's healthy by any stretch of the imagination, but it's one of the when you talk MMA versus boxing, why MMA always says that they're a safer sport than boxing.
Right. And I've done talks with MMA fighters for sure. I think the caution is in training. So it's not the title fights.
Yeah.
It's the training fights that sometimes they take these little hits and they're not really into it. So it certainly need to be something that you're very conscious of and coaches need to be aware of. And I've talked to these fighters. I've talked to the older fighters who've retired and they're worried. They're scared.
Yeah.
So hopefully as we develop this more knowledge base, we can make the sport safer.
So Shawn, we've spent some time talking about repair. This all makes perfect sense. What about prevention though?
Right. Prevention is something we all need to be thinking about. By the time you have a condition, it's always too late. And we do this for everything already, right? Like you put on lotions, creams, you're taking pills for your heart, you're taking calcium for your bones, you're doing all this stuff. But again, people don't think about their brain yet. And I do a lot of talks just about raising awareness about brain health. And when we think of prevention, we need to think of it for our brain. By the time you get something bad, it's too late. We need to start thinking about it in our 20s, in our 30s. And basically just do what you're already doing for the other parts of your body, just add your brain to it.
Guys, Dr. Shawn Watson. Shawn, had to say Dr. Watson one more time.
Sure,
but
yeah.
This man is
Pleasure.
making so much progress and is really, really moving us forward in something that has been not only a killer, but a puzzle since the beginning of time. And
Absolutely.
I'm appreciative of everything that you're doing. I know our audience is as well. And it's looking forward to having you on the show again and doing more stuff with you.
Thanks very
a lot.
much. Appreciate it. Thanks.